Hi there everyone, hope you're doing wonderful today. And man, we're already back to looking at another figure from the Studio Series 86 subline. Well, fear not, since I've already covered the pre-movie characters released in the first wave, we can finally talk about the movie. Now a real confession, but it's been a long while since I've seen the Transformers the movie. But regardless, I can't deny how fun and just wild this movie is. And of course what helps to improve it is the large cast of new characters from the 1986 toy line. And my personal favorite has to be Hot Rod, the spunky young Autobot punk who is destined to become the new leader of the Autobots, Rodimus Prime. As the main character of the movie, and with the whole movie being a dedicated story arc, Hot Rod has subsequently received a plethora of merchandise since, both his Generation 1 version as well as other versions of the character that have appeared since. Of course though, Studio Series 86 attempts to make figures of characters as though they were pulled from the film reel, and today's subject is no exception. But does this translate to a good figure? Well, yes, but let's find out how well he does it. Welcome to IdArmed Reviews. Today we'll be taking a look at the Transformers Studio Series 86-04 Autobot Hot Rod. Hot Rod released in 2021, and as usual with this subline, takes design cues directly from the Transformers the movie. Now, as you'd expect for the character, not just Generation 1, but nearly every version of the character, Hot Rod turns into, well, a futuristic hot rod motor vehicle. Crazy that this is what people in 1986 thought cars in 2006 would look like, but if my car's minivan at the time as anything could go by, we really haven't gotten there yet. Now in comparison to previous generations' renditions of this alternate mode, shown here is Titan Return Hot Rod from 2017, Studio Series Hot Rod takes a much smoother shape in order to aim for a closer look to the animation model rather than the original toy. From the subtle curvature of the exhaust pipes and sides of the car to the prominent curve all the way down the hood of the car, this alternate mode definitely feels like one that seems relaxing to lay on. To contrast is the bright yellow spoiler resting on the back, and man, that's what I call a spoiler! It's so big that I should slap a spoiler bar over it, but you know what? Nah. The sculpting overall is really great. As similar to Grimlock, it's not exactly one-to-one in sculpting with the character's original appearance. With little greebles lining the body of the car, you could definitely come up with wacky futuristic functions for each of them. Other than the spoiler, my favorite bit of detailing has to be the exhaust pipes, with the aforementioned curvature and spectacular silver paint applied. However, one issue I have with the figure is that the two pipes do not clip to each other at all. And it's not the worst thing ever, but it feels like something that didn't need to be an issue with the final product. And while it hasn't happened to my copy, these clips have apparently broken on several persons' copies, so watch out if or when you get one of these for yourself. Overall though, this is also a very clean car mode. None of the underside kibble prevents Hot Rod from rolling well with wheels on mushroom pegs, and even though the knees of the robot mode are clearly made up of the non-existent rear of the car, it's a necessary compromise for the very clean robot mode we'll see later on. Moving on from details, the painting and colors of this guy are also great. A point of contention in the fandom with Hot Rod has been that he leans towards a more toy-accurate red rather than the magenta he wore in the cartoon and movie. Since I like a mix of both influences in my Generations figures though, I love it. Though I might be biased towards red since it is one of my favorite colors. However, with listings found for a variant of this figure by JT Prime 17 on TFW, it looks like there's a chance for a magenta Hot Rod to be on the horizon. But going back to Rod, to complement the red is the wonderful orange and yellow paint and plastic throughout, most notably being the signature flame detailing on the hood. While maybe an outline would have been nice, I'm impressed with how well they were able to pull it off. In terms of color, the one nitpick I gotta point out is the yellow hinge on the roof of the car. Of course I understand that molding sprues limit how much of a certain color is used, but regardless, this is still pretty ugly. Now, something critical to bring up now for those who haven't purchased Hot Rod yet is that although he is being released as a Voyager, in reality he's the size of your average deluxe carbot in vehicle mode. To compensate, he comes with a whopping 7 accessories. First are a pair of included blasters, derived off of the ones included with the vintage Generation 1 toy, since Hot Rod didn't use guns in his original appearances. Obviously meant for robot mode, they can store into vehicle mode in two very wacky ways. First, again to replicate the Generation 1 toy, they can tab right onto the exposed engine using some sculpted details on the sides of the gun and a set of tabs holes on the engine. And secondly, more so for the robot mode, they can tab right in front of the spoiler. And to add onto them is Hot Rod's handsaw, used in the fight against the giant octopus on Quintessa. It uses 2 holes to tab onto the guns when they're stored on the figure. But big warning. Stress marks have appeared immediately on my saw when I did this, so I honestly recommend not doing this and just throwing the handsaw into a bin. Next is the Autobot Matrix of Leadership. Using the same mold as the one included with plethora of figures released in the War for Cybertron trilogy, it doesn't have anywhere to go in this mode. So I'll just toss it in my parts bin and we'll get back to that later. Moving on, Hot Rod includes free blast effects unique to himself at the time of this recording. First are a pair of bright blue flame blasts. In vehicle mode, these plug directly onto the ends of the exhaust pipes to replicate him speeding down some rotor landscape. And lastly is a third bright effect for a specific pose in robot mode, so for now into the blast effect bag that goes. Overall, Hot Rod's vehicle mode does have some problems, but with how great it is, I can move past them. Just like the Earthrise Datsuns I reviewed in the past, it feels like a car that you can display just as that, a car. But, of course, with any Transformer, this is just half of the figure. So let's transform Hot Rod into his robot mode. If you've messed with Titans Return Hot Rod in the past, Studio Series Hot Rod's transformation might feel very familiar. But with the upgrade in price point and overall enhanced engineering compared to a few years ago, this feels much more sophisticated. The standout parts to me have to be the way the rear of the car mode uncurls and then compresses into the lower legs, and the way the torso assembly rotates and folds into the roof to become a torso with the addition of a faux chest. Finishing it off with a simple head reveal, and we have Hot Rod in his robot mode in front of our eyes. In robot mode, Hot Rod pulls off this look super well. In comparison to the last few Hot Rod figures we've gotten, Studio Series Hot Rod is much leaner and colorful as a result of harkening back to the character's appearance in the original movie, and that together with the knee-high boots, collar around the neck, and the spoiler resting on the back, super visible, gives Hot Rod such a youthful vibe to it past versions just didn't have. Starting at the head, it's wonderful with its soft facial features complementing the bright blue eyes. The surrounding helmet is detailed with silver and dark red striping the crest downwards, and is also well sculpted. One thing you may notice is a very obvious hinge on the helmet, but we'll get back to that later. Moving down to the chest, and while it is in fact a faux chest piece, I love how it looks like a deformed and stretched version of the actual front of the vehicle mode. And finishing off my favorite details in robot mode are the chest flames, again, and the aforementioned spoiler on the back. I know they're technically separate elements in robot mode, but the way they both point upwards gives off such a striking appearance. And overall, in terms of sculpting and detail, Hot Rod is top notch. Now, Hot Rod does a lot, and I mean a lot of stuff in robot mode to compensate for being a Voyager. So let's start with a few things he can do without any accessories. Now remember that hinge on his head sculpt? Opening it up reveals a visor that flips down just like MP28 Hot Rod. When flipped down, this is actually my preferred look for the figure, as the eyes visible beneath the translucent blue visor is so crisp. Moving down to the arms, opening up the forearms reveals an alternate function for each hand. The right hand is replaced by the welding tool used in the movie to fix up on Quintessa after fighting the giant squid. You can even sort of fudge a blast effect in there to complete the effect of wielding parts together. On the other arm is a peg a little thicker than a traditional 5mm peg. This is here to serve as a place for the handsaw to go, and man, it looks so nice just being a handsaw. And as we'll see with the articulation, it looks very dynamic when posing around with it. And finally, as expected for a Generations Transformer, Hot Rod features a port on the back for any figure stand you have, and whether on the ground or in the air, Hot Rod can pull off any pose even better now. Bringing back all the accessories from earlier, Hot Rod's two rifles snugly fit into his hands, and can perfectly emulate all the pointing and shooting poses you desire. The Flame Blast can peg on to represent gunfire, but more fittingly and accurate to the movie, they can alternatively peg back on the exhaust gauntlets to represent shots of flames. Finally, bringing the Matrix back, it can be held with his opening hands I'll get into for articulation later. And you know what that means. By plugging in the last included blast effect, Hot Rod can imitate the iconic scene where he opens up the Matrix and unleashes its power. And last but not least is the included backdrop, the Depths of Unicron, which depicts the innards of Unicron and makes up the battlefield for Hot Rod and Galvatron's confrontation during the movie's climax. This backdrop allows you to display Hot Rod on it to fully complete the transformation to Rodimus Prime, Kingdom Rodimus not included. So, between Hot Rod's internal features and included accessories, there's lots of options for play and display. Moving on to articulation, even though current Generations is known for a large range of posability, Hot Rod takes it to the next level due to having that Voyager budget. Starting at the head, it is on a combination of a ball joint and hinged platform, allowing it to go all the way up and down, look side to side, and tilt sideways. The shoulders swing up and down on one joint, move outwards on an additional joint, and then have a butterfly joint on one last hinge. There is a swivel at the elbow functioning as a bicep, and the following elbow joint allows for a bend of over 90 degrees. And for the hands, they swivel at the wrist, can bend inwards due to the hand switching feature mentioned earlier, and the fingers can open. The swivel at the waist is unimpeded, and below it are hips that allow the legs to move forwards very far, backwards a fair bit, and do the full splits. Below are thigh joints that are also unimpeded, and those in turn are followed by a pair of double jointed knees that give you all the bend you need. And finally, the feet pivot up and down on one joint and have a decent ankle tilt using another joint. Hot Rod's articulation is incredible for his size, surpassing even Siege Spinister, which was already revolutionary for a deluxe-sized figure when it came out in 2019. However, Hot Rod does have an issue where his shoulder joints soft lock in certain positions when being moved around. But this is the rare situation where time positively impacts the joints of a figure, as these joints have become easier to work with over time. I'd say other than his color, a point of contention amongst fans and collectors when Hot Rod was revealed and subsequently released is his size. Because at 5.5 inches, Hot Rod is effectively a Prime Wars Trilogy Deluxe with the engineering and price point of a modern Voyager. And personally, as you could tell, that's perfectly okay with me actually. For a size comparison, here's Hot Rod with different sizes of deluxes from the War for Cybertron trilogy. We have Generations Deluxe Hubcap, Kingdom Air Razor, and Siege Crosshairs. And we can see when compared to different deluxe sizes, Hot Rod leans towards the bigger sized figures. Next, we have Hot Rod with a bunch of characters that appeared in the Transformers the movie and some of their most recent appearances in toy form. I am so happy with how Hot Rod compares to all of these characters in size, compared to what we got in the past with Power to Prime's Hot Rod at the very least. And finally, here's Hot Rod with Earthrise Optimus Prime. The two go together very well, even if Optimus Prime is a bit more dynamic in build. And having them both hold the Matrix allows for plenty of wonderful photos to be taken. Alright, once again, what can I say about this modern generation's release of a well-beloved Generation 1 character? Once you put aside his small size for his price point, the combination of its engineering, detail, articulation, and accessories make him feel so unreal in hand. And I feel like there's a certain amount of liveliness to this figure when being played around with that doesn't exist in every figure released these days. Other than Grimlock, I think Hot Rod is the other mandatory purchase from Studio Series 86 if you're interested in the subline. And you know now I'm heavily anticipating my Kingdom Rodimus Prime pre-order to come through, because if any figures released henceforth is as good as Studio Series Hot Rod, you know you'll be having a wonderful time. And that's it for Studio Series Hot Rod, and that was another big video, and I really didn't expect that this time. So maybe we'll put the rest of the first wave on the back burner for now to do way later this year. As usual, if you enjoyed today's video, I'd much appreciate it if you liked this video and subscribe for future reviews, and let me know in the comments what you think of Hot Rod yourself. Next review will be looking at something smaller and a lot more yellow, but is also a character with just as much kid appeal. So, as per usual, see you next time, and take care.